Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. We are back after Arsenal returned to winning ways. A victory over Brentford sees the Gunners re-establish their 5-point lead at the top of the Premier League. It was far from a spectacular game. It was far from an enjoyable watch, I have to say. It was a little bit nervy at times. It was a little bit edgy at times, but Arsenal got the job done. And ultimately, that's what matters. On today's pod, we're going to break the victory over Brentford down. We're going to talk about the team selection. We're going to talk about some of the key moments and highlights in the game. We're also going to discuss some of the individual performances. It was great to see Ben White back in the picture and performing at the level he did. We're going to talk about Mikel Merino. Is it time that we just class him as a striker now? Have we got to that point? I feel like I'm getting to that point. We're also going to talk about the differences between Odegaard and Eze. We're also going to touch on Noni Madueke's performance, as well as covering, of course, two worrying bits of sort of news. Well, I say news. It's not really news yet because we don't know exactly what the deal is, but we did lose 2 players to injury yesterday. 2 players had to be taken off. Let's hope that those changes were precautionary and nothing more, but we'll get into all of that and loads more on this episode. Good morning to everybody who is with us on the live stream. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here with us. If you're watching this back a little bit later on or you're listening to it via Apple or Spotify, thank you so much for being with us. And if you're a patron, well, you've got the episode ad-free and you're going to get access to another bonus episode, which will be with you later on today. So lots to come on the Patreon side of things as well. You know what? There was something that I cut. There was a clip that I cut on my phone last night when I was in my cab home. And I want to just try and see if I can, drop it over to StreamYard so that I can quickly upload it and play it to you guys while we're live. I realize I should have done this before, but of course, me being organized, it was never going to happen, was it? Let's see if I can get that clip up. I think I should be able to do it. Should be easy. Oh, it's the wrong type of file. No, I'm not going to sit here and convert files mid-live podcast. What I'm going to do is just tell you about it because I'm pretty sure that was another prediction from me that was absolutely bang on. Pretty sure I said, in fact, I know I said because I cut the clip. In yesterday's pod, it would be 2-0 to the Arsenal. After I said it would be 1-1 at the Bridge. For all your betting tips, I'm kidding. Come over and I'll sort you out. I'm just kidding. Anyway, look, there's a lot to unpack when you consider that it wasn't the most enthralling encounter, but there's a fair few talking points that I want to make sure we cover off. I think we should start with the team selection. The question going into the game was to rotate or not to rotate. The follow-up question to that is always how much rotation is too much rotation. And you always get a variance in opinions with regards to what the right thing is to do in a scenario and situation like this. Now, I'd have gone a little bit stronger than Mikel did in the end. I was actually surprised that he made some of the changes that he did. It paid off. And, when you get the result that you're after, plus you're able to protect certain players or at least sort of minimize the minutes that they're exposed to, that's about as good an outcome as you can hope for. Okay. So if we start with the team selection, there were 3 changes to the side that played at Stamford Bridge. Martin Odegaard came in from the start to replace Eberechi Eze. We had Ben White coming in to replace Jurriën Timber. And we had Noni Madueke starting on the right side in place of Bukayo Saka. When I first looked at that, I was very wary of the fact that we had changed both players on the right-hand side. Ben White's barely played. The last time he started a game in the Premier League for Arsenal was on the opening weekend of the season. Noni Madueke's been out for a while and hasn't had as much game time at Arsenal as he would have liked up until now. And you're kind of looking at that and you're going, well, none of them are probably at their best right now, given how little football they've played of late. There probably isn't that relationship and connection between the two of them because of how little they've played together. In fact, I don't think have they ever played together, those two. Like, off the top of my head, I can't think of a time when they have from the start of the game. So I looked at that and I was a bit like, I don't know about this. I kind of expected Odegaard to start. I expected Eze to be the one to make way. I hoped that we were going to see Leandro Trossard back in the picture. Obviously, that wasn't the case. He wasn't on the bench. Neither was William Saliba. They were two players whom there was some hope around, but obviously the game came around too fast for them. The hope is, fingers crossed, that they'll be back for the weekend, because if they are, that would hand us quite the boost, wouldn't it? But yeah, as I say, that right side, it worried me a little bit. But you know what? In the first half, our right side was brilliant in every aspect of the game. Defensively, we didn't give barely anything away. Offensively, we were causing Brentford problems. Rico Henry was having a difficult time contending with Noni Madueke. Ben White was making those fantastic overlapping runs. And Arsenal looked really fluid down that right-hand side. And we talked a lot in the past about the team being kind of right leaning in terms of the way that we build up. I think we've gone some way this season in kind of just balancing that out a little bit. But, you know, then when you make changes like that and you take out your Sakas and Timbers, you know, two players, one that you'd argue is probably Arsenal's best player and the other who you'd argue could be Arsenal's best performer this season, obviously there's going to be a part of you that thinks, is this going to work? What was really, really interesting about this game, and I'm not seeking to piss on anyone's parade or to downplay what Arsenal managed to do last night, but I thought it was fascinating that Brentford made as many changes as they did. They made 5 changes. And the surprise one, I suppose, was the decision to leave out Igor Thiago, who's got 11 goals in the Premier League this season. He was left out. Nathan Collins, who normally plays at the heart of the Brentford defence, was left out. There was no Jordan Henderson in the starting 11. There was a good few players in that Brentford team, or that would normally be in that Brentford team, that just were not selected. Mikel Damsgaard was another one. And I was thinking about that. And I thought, is this the classic case of a manager who probably doesn't have, in fact, definitely doesn't have the resources of some of the bigger clubs, going, well, I've got to prioritize here. And away at Arsenal, what's the chances of us getting anything? Is it worth me playing everybody, having watched them play at the weekend and pick up an important victory? Is it worth me running them all into the ground and probably still not getting anything? Or should I hold some of them back with a view to the trip to Tottenham? Now, that says so much, by the way, about where Tottenham are at, doesn't it? That Brentford have probably looked at this week and gone, Arsenal away, no chance. Tottenham away, though, at the weekend, tell you what, we could do something. It says a lot about where Tottenham are at. It says a lot about, how well Brentford know Thomas Frank and the fact that they think they can get one over him, which I thought was really, really interesting. I mentioned the combinations on the right-hand side, and it took Arsenal around about 11 minutes to break the deadlock. And it came, no surprise, via some really good link-up play down the right-hand side. Lovely little flick from Noni Madueke to release Ben White, who produced one of his trademark crosses. You know, that little cross where he sort of stands the ball up in towards the near post and then someone attacks it. It was brilliant. Lovely ball into the box. And Mikel Merino, I mean, what a header, what a finish. We'll talk about Mikel Merino in isolation in a little bit, but I mean, the guy has just done an incredible job, playing in that position, to the point where, as we're going to discuss a little bit later on, I'm looking at him now as a striking option. And I don't think that's a wild take. I don't think that's a crazy thing. And we'll come on to, as I say, expand on that a little bit further. I just want to quickly work our way through the timeline of the game. There was a brilliant, brilliant save from David Raya at 1-0 to deny Kevin Schade. Brilliant spring up into the air from David Raya, and he tips it onto the crossbar. Arsenal get away with that. But that was just a reminder, wasn't it, of Brentford's prowess and threat, if you like, from set-piece situations. We had to be wary of that and switched on to that all night. And then before halftime, we lose Christian Mosquera. And you're looking at it and you're going, not another one. And I was commentating on the game last night, and I've got a reel coming out later, and it will be published as a YouTube short as well for those of you that are interested, sort of taking you behind the scenes, what it's like to commentate on an Arsenal game. I just need to piece it all together, but we'll get there. I looked at that and I thought, oh, for God's sake, like there's no Saliba right now. There's no Gabriel. One of the reasons we've been okay in the absence of those players is because we've got really capable deputies like Christian Mosquera. And when I saw that Saliba wasn't even in the squad last night, my mind started running away with itself. Does that mean he's going to be out for Villa? Is he going to be out for Villa? What do we do if he's out for Villa? Do we put Ben White inside? Do we put Jurien Timber inside? Do we move Calafiori to centre back and end up playing Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back? Like my mind was running away with itself at that point. It looked like there was an awkward landing from Christian Mosquera, and somewhere along the line, it felt like he'd maybe tweaked his ankle a little bit. Now, hopefully, it's nothing serious. Hopefully, based on the fact that we are picking up so many injuries right now, there was a more cautious approach adopted, and that's why Christian Mosquera was hooked right away. Now, this bit was really, really interesting because when you look at what Mikel Arteta had available to him on the bench in terms of defensive options, if I run through it, he had Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's obviously a left back, and he had Jurien Timber. That's about it from a defensive standpoint. Bringing on Lewis-Skelly means moving Calafiori, which means changing two positions. Some people would have argued that maybe Ben White should have gone inside and played at right centre-back with Timber coming on and playing at right back. I actually think Mikel Arteta got it right. I thought what he did was absolutely the right solution. And for a number of reasons. So first of all, Ben White's back in the side after a while, and he's playing brilliantly. I know that needs must, and I know that you've got to prioritize the good of the team. But to have moved him out of a position in which he was thriving, and it felt like he'd really kind of got his mojo back, would have been wrong, in my opinion. So to bring on Jurien Timber and say to him, you go and sit at right centre-back, I think was the right thing. Now, stature-wise, Jurien Timber doesn't look like a centre-back to me. And I know he's played there lots and he's played there plenty. And before he came to Arsenal, you would have said that that was his primary position. But he's not, in my opinion, big enough, tall enough to play that role week in, week out. But I'll tell you what, he's as good a deputy as anybody because he's physical, he's strong, he is very, very hard to get the ball off. He's quick across the ground. He's very, very intelligent, very comfortable on the ball. You look at it and you say, yeah, he's got most of the ingredients. He's just lacking a little bit of height. But in this game, and given that we don't know what the situation is with William Saliba, Mikel Arteta said it was a matter of days, but then he wasn't in the squad at all last night. So you just got to be open to all possibilities here. I think actually bringing Jurien Timber in, letting us have a look at him in that centre-back position, it certainly made me feel a lot more comfortable about how we cope at Villa now, if indeed Christian Mosquera misses that game. Now, I don't know that for sure, and we're going to hear from Mikel Arteta tomorrow morning. The problem is, right, with sort of some of these press conferences, and I sort of make this point quite a bit. A, you barely get anything out of Mikel when it comes to injury news. You get sort of vague messages and you have to try and read between the lines and try and figure out what it is that he's getting at. The problem is as well, though, is that this press conference that's going to take place on Friday, it's a morning one. It's a 9:30 start, I think. When they're in the afternoon, it's a bit frustrating for me because I can't make them. But when they're in the afternoon, at least you've just had a training session. And from that training session, you probably get a little bit more clarity about who's fit, who's not, particularly when you're playing on a Saturday game. I feel like this has been deliberately scheduled for Friday morning before training so that Mikel Arteta can sit there and say, we've got one more session. Don't know. Is Saliba fit? Don't know. We've got one more session. Is Trossard fit? Don't know. We've got one more session. Let's see how they get on today. And listen, I'm not knocking it. If that's what he wants to do, then fine. And it does keep the opposition guessing, I suppose. But from a fan's perspective, it could be quite frustrating. But I think when you get those first thing in the morning press conferences on a Friday, the chances of you getting any really kind of definitive and concrete team news, yeah, they're not very high. They're not very high. So we go in at halftime. We're a goal to the good. Mikel Merino has broken the deadlock, but we've lost Christian Mosquera. Timber comes in, right centre-back, does fine. After the break, the tempo was seriously lacking. There was no intensity to our game. We were moving the ball too slowly. We weren't working it through the lines in the same way. Credit to Brentford. They came out with an intent. They came out with an aggression. They were playing on the front foot. They managed to force a few set pieces. And there was a little bit of tension and anxiety, I would say, within Emirates Stadium. You could feel it. It's not that Brentford were peppering our goal or that Brentford were sort of threatening to bang the door down. There wasn't any of that. But you just got the feeling that this was not done and that we needed that second goal to just take the game away from them. And listen, Mikel Arteta could have been, he could have been a little less proactive than he was in the end. He could have been like, well, you know, I'm protecting Bukayo Saka. I'm protecting Eberichi Eza. I don't really want to throw those guys on. The purpose of tonight's team selection, that is, was to give those guys a breather. But what I like about Mikel this season versus previous seasons is that he's a little bit more proactive than he would have been in the past. And I would argue even that he's more proactive than he was at the start of this season, where he's looked at it and he's gone, there's a chance, maybe not a big chance or a great chance, because Raya's not doing much and Arsenal aren't having too many problems dealing with Brentford. But it's almost like he said, well, no, hold on. Let's make sure that we just add that little bit of impetus before we get to the stage where the game's running away from us and we can't pull it back and we can't shift and change and impact the momentum in the way that we want to. So he done the right thing for me in bringing Saka and Eza on. Even after that, like, there was still elements of the performance that I wasn't completely satisfied. The tempo was low, intensity was low, as I've already explained. But, you know, again, this is another game in a very, very short period of time. Arsenal having to navigate their way through this. And yeah, you can talk about the squad, and it's great that we have the squad. But the squad is being tested as well because of the sheer volume of injuries that we've got at this moment in time. So, yeah, it's not a surprise, I guess, is where I'm going, that, you know, the levels dropped in that second half. We did create a few more bits and pieces once those changes were made. Calafiori ventured forward, had a shot that was saved by Kelleher. Merino went to try and get on the end of the rebound, and I think he was expecting a challenge to come from Kelleher that never did, and he looked a little bit silly in the end, going down, asking for a penalty there, Mikel Merino. He also missed one after was it a Declan Rice shot, I think? The goalkeeper parried it. And I can't remember if it was Rice's shot that Merino latched onto, the one where he wanted the penalty, or if it was Calafiori. It was one or the other anyway. And there was another one where the keeper saved it, this time down to his left, and it came to Merino, and on his weaker side, he just couldn't find the balance to wrap his right boot around it and score. Bukayo Saka missed one when he sort of fell over as he went to strike it. Again, this was a kind of rebound type situation. He seemed to kick over the top of the ball with his studs, which took all the sting out of the effort and made it really, really easy to defend against, and obviously prevented him from scoring. But yeah, in the end, we get that second goal. Mikel Merino, again, hugely involved, this time having dropped back into the midfield as a result of some of the changes. Gyökeres had come on by that point. We'll talk about the Declan Rice thing in just a second, but Bukayo Saka does really well, gets the shot off. I think Kevin Kelleher made a dog's dinner of this. Perry Groves told me in commentary last night that I was harsh on Kelleher, that it's a good strike from close proximity, does well to get a strong palm on it, and he's really unlucky. I think he's made a dog's dinner of it. I'm not going to change my mind on that. And the ball just about ends up in the back of the net in the end. Arsenal 2-0. That's it. Game done. 3 points on the board. We move. But the second half was maybe overshadowed a little bit by the injury to Declan Rice. Now, if we're to lose Declan Rice, this is a huge problem. He's been so important to this Arsenal team. I appreciate when people say you need to rest him. You need to protect him. You need to limit his minutes. You need to get him off in situations when you can. I completely agree with all of that. Yesterday probably wasn't the time to do that. At 1-0 up, as it was when he went off, I don't think that you should be looking to take Declan Rice off. My argument would be that in some of the recent matches we've played where we've been, you know, in the lead and quite comfortably, that was the time to protect Declan Rice. It looks like it's a calf problem. We don't know the details. We don't know the ins and outs of it. But the hope is that he'll be fine. And he seemed to be moving okay after the game. Now, Mikel Arteta was asked about this in the press conference. He said he's fine to walk, but he's not okay to play. Sort of wanting to, by the sounds of things, just advise a little bit of caution with regards to sort of people's assessments of the fact that after the game, Rice came out onto the pitch and whatnot. So, yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. But look, it's a massive victory for Arsenal. Did it come at a cost? It feels like it. But hopefully we can get over those problems nice and quickly. We can get a couple more bodies back ahead of the weekend and be in better shape to take on Aston Villa at Villa Park on Saturday lunchtime. Look, we're going to take a short pause. When we come back from that pause, we're going to discuss Ben White's performance in detail. We're going to also talk about the differences between Ødegaard and Eze and the different things, essentially, that those two bring to the midfield, whichever one is selected. We're also going to talk about Mikel Merino, the striker, a little bit more. Plus, I've got some thoughts on Noni Madueke's display last night as well. We'll also round up with questions like we always do. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, Harry Symeou. Right, let's talk Ben White. Felt to me yesterday like Ben White was back. Like, not just back in terms of being available, like really back. This was the Ben White that we all kind of fell in love with over the course of the last few seasons. A player that came in as a centre-back, turned into a kind of marauding fullback, a player with a bit of housery up his sleeve, with the quality to impact the game in the final third, but also a really, really solid defender. The last few times I've watched Ben White, I've not felt he's been at 100% fitness-wise. And when you're not at 100% in terms of your fitness, it does impact your performance. He's had to bide his time, and he's had to bide his time of late because Jurrien Timber has just been in sensational form. Okay. And often we talk about players who don't play, potentially feeling unhappy, potentially knocking on the manager's door and asking the question, you know, why aren't I playing? When are my opportunities going to come along? But I think in this case, Ben White's had to be really kind of humble and just acknowledge that Jurrien Timber's been playing out of his skin. And because of that, actually, in questioning Mikel Arteta's decision over who's playing right back, you make yourself look a little bit silly. When someone is performing the way Timber has been performing, you don't really have a leg to stand on when you go and demand that you should be playing instead. You have to bide your time. You have to wait for your opportunity. And when it comes along, you have to take it. And I can tell you, coming away from Emirates Stadium last night, there was a real feeling of, yeah, do you know what? We've got our Ben White back. And it's been a really difficult period for him. Lots of injuries last season. A very stop and start campaign for him. It's kind of been the same at the start of this season as well. He's managed to sort of stay fit for a period of time now, but obviously the opportunities have been limited based on the fact that, as I say, Jurrien Timber's been unbelievable. But this was an opportunity that he had to grab with both hands, and he did. He did. He provided the assist for the first goal. What an assist it was. He combined with Madueke all night. He had the energy to get up and down, to make those overlapping runs, to join into the midfield. He looked like the Ben White that we all remember. And that, for me, was probably the biggest positive of the night. You can talk about Merino getting another goal. You can talk about the fact that maybe Gyökeres got some more minutes, that we were able to limit how much Saka and Eze played ahead of that trip to Villa Park. You can talk about all those things. But for me on the night, the biggest positive was that Ben White looked like the Ben White we've all come to know. And I really, really enjoyed his performance last night. There's a few comments on that in the live chat. Let's pick some of them up. Guna Oz says, Ben White coming back. It's just at the right moment with the addition of the Mosquera injury. I wish we could rest Timber more. Thomas says, Ben White is such a strong character. Happy to see him back. Absolutely. Andy says, it was all a matter of physical fitness. In terms of intelligence and ability on the ball, Benny Blanco is pure class. If Mosquera is out, it's either Calafiori moving inside or Ben White starting at right back. I think, based on what we saw last night, it would probably be Ben White starting at right back, Timber moving inside, and playing alongside Piero Hincapié. It's still a patched up defense, but yeah, you look at the options that we have, and when you start to get people like Ben White back, you certainly feel a lot more comfortable, don't you? AFC D&B says, brilliant performance. I was slightly worried seeing him start because he was next to Mosquera, but he was brilliant. Linked up well with Noni as well, mainly in that first half. Completely agree. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about Martin Odegaard's display. The captain was back in the starting 11 last night. What did I make of his performance? Very busy, very active, on the ball a lot, turning, twisting, setting the tempo, setting the rhythm. I do think that when Martin Odegaard is in the team, we move the ball a little bit quicker. Like, just generally speaking, in the midfield, we move it with a little bit more zip, which is kind of what I'm looking for, and I think is what you need when you face low block teams. But in terms of actually impacting and influencing the game in the final third, I didn't think Martin Odegaard did enough. Now, this was his first start after a long period on the sidelines, and so for that reason, I'm willing to cut him some slack. What became apparent to me, and I've said this for a while, but this was kind of further evidence of this theory, and it kind of really has led to me doubling down is what double downing. What's that? Doubling down is that when he plays in midfield versus Eza, you get something completely different. Eza probably doesn't have as many touches, doesn't drop deep to receive the ball from the centre halves or from the fullbacks anywhere near as frequently, doesn't really turn as much as Odegaard and change the direction of the game. They're just very different players. Odegaard is someone that is busy all the time. Eza, someone that comes alive in certain scenarios and certain situations. Odegaard's a better presser. Odegaard's a better defender. Obviously, that is part and parcel of playing in the Arsenal midfield. But I suppose that the gap in Martin Odegaard's skill set, at least at the moment, and this hasn't always been the case, which is why I'm reluctant to say, oh, well, Martin Odegaard's finished, because he has got this in his locker, and we know that because we've seen it before. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad we've got that option. I'm glad we've got our captain back. I'm glad we've got someone of such high footballing IQ back in the team and back in the picture. But it's going to take some time before we see the best version of him. Can he influence the game more in the final third? I think he can. I think he has to. And so it's a kind of trade-off, isn't it? You're going to have to decide, if you're Mikel Arteta going into pretty much every game now, with them both available, what it is you want from said match. Do you want a midfielder that, as I say, is going to be busy, that is going to set your rhythm, set your tempo? Or do you want someone who's capable of producing a moment on the edge of the penalty area? Because if it's the latter that you want, then Eza's the guy. If you're more interested in the all-round game, then Odegaard is the one that you're going to pick. And look, what a privileged position it is to be in, by the way, having both of those players available to you. I think we're probably going to end up seeing Eza play a little bit more frequently on that left-hand side, just as a result of Odegaard's return. There was a lot of people yesterday who were critical of my views on Eberechi Eza, saying that I was sort of being a little bit harsh on him while giving others a free pass. Others were saying that I was giving him a free pass while being harsh on others. Basically, I couldn't make sense of it. But ultimately, my point was that while Odegaard was out, it was Eza in that 10, and that was it. And now that Odegaard's back, Mikel has a decision to make. And so hopefully that kind of lights a bit of a fire underneath both of them. Because both of them want to play in that position ideally, right? Eza can play from the left, but he prefers to play in those central areas. So if you can, create a sort of added extra desire and, light a fire underneath both of them to say, you know what, you need to step up because the other one's now breathing down your neck. That competition is healthy, right? And we've seen us benefit from that in other areas of the pitch. Look at the way Trossard stepped up this season, knowing that there's other players that can play on that left-hand side. Look at the way Martinelli's increased his goal contributions, etc., etc. So, yeah, I don't want to be too judgmental on Martin Odegaard when he's come back from that injury and started for the first time. Arsenal in general last night weren't at their brilliant best. It was a strange game. I do think he needs to start affecting the game more in the final third. And if he doesn't, that conversation is going to keep cropping up. But based on yesterday and the fact that it was, as I say, the first start back, I'm going to cut him some slack. Let's talk Mikel Merino. For such a long time, we've talked about Mikel Merino as the makeshift number 9. The guy that Arsenal turn to when they have no other option at centre forward. Now, we've always talked about how well he's done that role, how impactful he's been, what an excellent one-touch finisher he is, and how much he deserves the praise coming his way for changing his position, for being intelligent enough to pick up what he needs to do, for the work that he puts in, etc., etc. He's always had that credit from Arsenal fans, I would say. Some have even said that they prefer to see him in that position than they do in the midfield. But is it time now that we stopped calling him a makeshift striker and actually categorize Mikel Merino as a centre forward? Because in terms of his ability to finish, he's as good as anyone we've got in the group. Like, if you said to me, last minute of a Champions League final at 0-0, you're going to get one chance inside the 6-yard box, heading opportunity. Who do you want it to fall to? Victor Gyökeres, Kai Havertz, Gabriel Jesus, or Mikel Merino? There's a lot of people that would pick Mikel Merino, and for good reason. For good reason. So is it time that we stop calling Mikel Merino a makeshift striker and actually seriously consider him as a centre-forward option, even when everybody's fit and everybody's available? Are we at that point yet? I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Let me know. I think it's a fascinating conversation. I really, really do. My brother sent me a message yesterday during the game. I think it was shortly after Merino scored, and it was quite thought-provoking. The message was, how many goals would Mikel Merino have scored for Sporting Lisbon if he played up front for them last season? Basically making the comparison to Victor Gyökeres. Now, this is not to criticize Victor Gyökeres or to get on his back. This is to highlight the brilliance of Mikel Merino and the importance of Mikel Merino and what he's brought to the table. Arsenal Avenger says he's our new Havertz in that he isn't a midfielder or a centre forward. He's something in between. I kind of agree with that. But here's what I think is really interesting, okay? At the start of the season when Victor Gyökeres was leading the line and it wasn't really working, right? There were periods, weren't there, where, you know, Victor Gyökeres was playing, we were looking at him and we were saying he's not involved in the game enough. You know, he's making runs, he's spinning off people, he's darting from left to right and from outside to in and in to out. But we're not finding him. The kind of common consensus at the time was, okay, it's something different. There's this striker that wants to play off the shoulder, which is not what we've been used to with Kai Havertz or with Gabriel Jesus. And it's going to take a bit of time for us to adapt and for us to understand what's required in order to get the best out of him. And then just before Victor Gyökeres got injured, it felt like we'd got to that point where there was a greater understanding between the Swedish striker and some of the players around him. And then you lose Victor Gyökeres, and then you have to play with a false 9 again. And so your whole sort of approach in terms of the way you attack again has to be looked at, again has to be tweaked, again has to be adjusted. And I think that's been a big challenge for Arsenal that's maybe gone under the radar. But when you look at the productivity levels that we seem to get out of Mikel Merino versus Victor Gyökeres, you start to wonder, and it is just a question, whether or not Arsenal are better off playing in a way that services a false 9 than playing in a way that services an out-and-out 9. That's an interesting question, I think, and an interesting debate. What I would say is that nobody's saying here that, you know, we shouldn't assign Victor Gyökeres. We needed an out-and-out number 9. And we need one within our group and in our squad. Absolutely we do. I just wonder if we have... I just wonder if we're at a place now where we should continue with Merino there, even with Victor Gyökeres returning. I don't know. It's such an interesting debate, an interesting question. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments on that one. So do get involved. I want to round off my bit by talking a little bit about Noni Madueke. Lively in that first half, great footwork at times, lots of trickery, but was the end product there often enough? Probably not, to be honest with you. And that's kind of always been my question about Noni Madueke. Hopefully we see that. But I suppose the encouraging thing was that those combinations with Ben White and with Martin Odegaard, who likes to drift over to that side, they're developing, aren't they? And they look quite strong. But Madueke, I think I just want to see a little bit more. Maybe it's because I was so underwhelmed by his performance at Chelsea when he came off the bench. I know it's not easy to come off the bench in a game like that and have an impact, but I was really underwhelmed with what I saw from him at the Bridge. And so perhaps I'm coming from a place where I was expecting a little bit more against Brentford, just in terms of, him going some way to shut me up. I think Madueke in a 1v1 is as good as anybody, but he's got to make the right decisions after those 1v1 duels. He's got to make the right decisions and have the quality to execute whatever it is that he decides to do as well. And that's where there's still probably a little bit of a question mark for me when it comes to Noni Madueke. Right, very, very brief pause again. And when we come back, it is question time. So get your questions into the live chat. We'll pick up a few of those before we sign out. Of course, we will. Remember, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. That really, really does help. If you are listening to us on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. They also really, really help. And if you want to go one further, you can become a Chronicles of a Gooner patron. Patrons get access to every single episode completely ad-free. They get access to bonus episodes around every single match, the latest of which will be out with you later on today. Also, you get access to our Discord server as well, which is a great place to be. So, do get involved. We'd love to have you on board and as part of the Patreon family. The link is in the description below, patreon.com/The Chronicles of a Gooner, or you can click the QR code top corner of your screens right now if you're watching the episode. Thank you so much for your support. Right, short pause. When we come back, we'll do that. We'll dive into your questions.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Okay, let's dive into the chat box for the final part of today's show. Arsenal Avenger, just on that point about Odegaard and Gyökeres and that relationship. He says once they get going, it'll be fire. I don't deny that. Lots of people praising Noni Madueke as if to say that I'm being a little bit harsh. That's fine. That's fine. If that's how people feel, that's fine. I'm not saying he played badly. I didn't say that. I'm pretty sure those words didn't come out of my mouth. But as I say, brilliant in the 1v1. I just want to see a little bit more in terms of making the right decision. Because I think that's the thing with Madueke. He sort of threatens to be super devastating. But then there's something that I always feel maybe holds him back. Is it decision making? Is it that technical quality when it's time to put that decision into practice? I don't know. It's interesting. Also, guys, if people are like bickering in the chat, I'll just block people, man. I can't be bothered for this. I'm too old for it. Okay, I'm a grown man with 3 children. I don't have time to get involved in online spats. Just people have different opinions to each other. Just get on with it. Just ignore each other. You can block each other so that you don't see the comments from the people that you don't like if it's that much of a problem. But honestly, come on. Guitar Solo says, can we say that Eze is a massive drop-off from Odegaard since he does not have the tools Odegaard has? You said the same about Norgard and Zubi when it comes to ball progression. I can see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to catch me out. No, I can't say that Eze is a massive drop-off to Odegaard. That's one of the most ridiculous statements I've seen in the live chat. How can anybody say how can anybody in good faith believe that the drop off, if you like, between, or that the difference in level between Eze and Odegaard is the same as Norgard and Zubimendi? Ridiculous comment. Ridiculous. I can't believe I fell into the trap of reading that. Guitar solos on a wind up again. What else have we got? Lots of Mikel Merino love. Absolutely. Andy says on Madueke, he had a lovely start, but then he faded really, really badly. Confidence can't drop that quickly. I don't know if it was confidence. I think we've also got to remember that Noni's been out for a while as well. And he's still building himself up, isn't he? And he probably only had 45 minutes in the tank of sort of that high level. That could have been to do with it as well. Guna Oz says, I agree with you, Harry. There's a wall that Madueke needs to overcome to become more of a threat from that right-hand side. What else have we got? On the Merino thing, Theo Johnson says, it feels like a catch-22. I would start Merino because he can be impactful starting or coming off the bench. But with Gyökeres, it feels like he needs time to get into the flow of the game. Yeah, and some players, I always say this, some players are better at kind of coming on cold and getting up to speed with things quicker than others. I really do believe that. Like, I always used to feel like Leandro Trossard was really good coming off the bench and being impactful. Whereas when you did it the other way around and you played Trossard from the start and then asked Martinelli to come on, it didn't always work the same. So yeah, it's interesting. I love this from Sir Nicholas T, who says, what is Mikel Merino? That will go down as one of the great philosophical questions of our time. I love that. I love that. It's so true. It's so true. Look, I think there's a lot of agreement in the chat. A few disagreements as well, which is fine. But as I say, come on, guys, keep it respectful. It's a problem with YouTube, isn't it? People get a little bit too passionate. AJ Envoy says, is he a bird? Is he a plane? No, he's that makeshift striker that scores for Spain. There you go. Love that. I think that's a great way to sign out. In fact, look, let me take one more. Well, there's two more questions I'm going to tackle, actually. Let's do it. Stephen Charles says, is it only me that will be super nervous when Jesus comes off the bench and worried for his health on every run and turn? No, I get that. I get that. You know, he's had 2 really bad knee injuries. And the thing with Jesus is that we all feel this really strong connection and bond to him. Even though he barely played football for the last 2 years, it's like he came in at a time where Arsenal really needed a lift. And he provided that, you know, him and Zinchenko. And that's why towards the end of Zinchenko's Arsenal career, I was very reluctant to kind of join the pylon. There was a few people that were sort of like, nah, you got to get rid of him. I agree that we needed to move on from Zinchenko, but the idea that he should be disrespected didn't sit comfortably with me because, as I say, he was a part of that real uplift at Arsenal. And so was Jesus. And that's why there's always going to be that bit of respect and affection for them. Rumble says, how does Mikel manage Declan Rice? I feel he's doing so much at the moment, needs a rest. Yeah, I agree. Again, as I sort of briefly touched on earlier, I don't think he was wrong to leave him on yesterday. I don't think he was wrong to play him yesterday. I think I can look at other games in recent weeks, recent months, where there was probably a scenario in which we could have got away with taking Declan Rice off, and we didn't. And, you know, I keep getting blasted for saying that there's a drop-off between our first choice midfielders and Christian Norgard. But I think Mikel feels that as well. Because if he didn't, he would be protecting Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi probably a lot more than he is right now. And so you can have a pop at me and say, you know, my opinion's silly and all the rest of it. I would suggest that deep down, Mikel Arteta knows that to be the case. And that is telling. That is visible, I should say, in his actions and in the decisions he makes. But yeah, anyway, right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me. Really, really appreciate all the love and support. Remember, there's a Patreon piece coming out a little bit later on today. So make sure you're signed up if you're interested. Just £3 a month, less than the price of a cup of coffee. Ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, membership to our Discord server. That's what's on offer. And you'll be supporting me here on the Chronicles of a Gooner. Thank you all so much. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, have a wonderful day. Goodbye. Up the
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Come on, you Gunners.